Hello, fellow Portuguese speakers! Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to address the most common mistakes my students make while learning Portuguese. It's been a few years of teaching now, over 1,000 lessons and over 100 students, so I know what I'm talking about. And stick around so you can understand a little bit more of what you can avoid once you are speaking and once you are reading. Bora lá? When learning a language, it's very common to make mistakes. And every language has its own unique set of rules. Portuguese is not an exception. Let me guide you through the most common mistakes and how to avoid them. First, very common mistake, confusing ser and estar. Why does this happen? Because in English, you have just one verb that's good for both of these. You have be. I am, you are, he, she is. But we have two, and they work very differently from each other. You might be understood, but sometimes it might sound a little weird if you mistake them. I'll give you some examples so you know when to use ser and when to use estar. For example, if you say eu tô cansado, you're saying that right now you are tired. And if you say eu sou cansado, it means that you are always tired. Like it's a feature of yours to be tired. Rodrigo. It's a feature of yours to be tired, and I think somebody in the room just related to it. If you say você tá bonito, it probably means that the person right now, with the clothes they are wearing, with the hair that they are with the hair like this, they look really nice. But if you say você é bonito, it means that in general, you are a beautiful person. It's your feature. You might be really badly dressed, but you're still very good looking. So você tá bonito, você é bonito are different like this. My tip is use ser for permanent states for things that won't change, such as sometimes looks, a location of a building, a location of a room in your house. And then you use estar for how you are feeling. You use estar for where you are in the moment, because you are a person who moves around, so you are alive, you está somewhere. The pronunciation tip that I have for you, you might have noticed while I was explaining is, you don't have to say is. Ele tá cansado, eu tô cansada, ele tá bonito, ele tá feliz. Second very common mistake, because this is something that is really hard for you guys to tackle, which is the nasal sounds, like coração, mão, então. It's a sound that it looks like you don't actually have in English. So I have a tip for this. Try to say like you would say sun or none. This but then at the end, instead of putting an N at the end, try to build an O at this end of words. So coração, instead of saying sun, coração. According to my fellow employees, you should talk like the guy from Creed to make it easier. Pronunciation of the letter L. This is easy, and there's no excuse for you not to practice. You shouldn't say Brasil, you shouldn't say alto, you shouldn't say legal. L at the end of words or before a consonant will sound like W. So, legal, alto, Brasil, normal. Direct translation of idioms. Even Brazilian people do that. We have some specific expressions that will only work for Portuguese, and there are some specific expressions that will only work for English. For example, it's raining cats and dogs. Don't translate that literally. Tá chovendo cães e gatos. It just sounds weird. We say tá chovendo canivete. So a good tip for you is to try and find out what is the equivalent of the phrase you want. Sometimes we have some expression for that, and sometimes it might be a little bit more literal. So it's important to keep an eye on those things. Beware with false friends. So if you have, there are many words that are similar in Portuguese and in English, like important, importante. There are some phrases, there are some words that are very similar, but there are some that are just similar and they're not the same. For example, parents. Parents, parentes are different things. Actually, atualmente are different things. Lanche and lunch are different things, even though they are about the same thing, more or synonymous, but they're not the same. So be aware of those little things and you'll be just fine. Neglecting verb conjugations. It sounds super weird if you say eu falar com ele. Não, eu falo com ele, eu falei com ele. So study those. It will sound much better and you will sound like you respect our language much more. Last but not least at all, misplacing stress syllables. There are some words that won't change if you misplace the stress syllable. It will just sound weird. For example, academia, academia. Academia sounds weird, but you will be understood and it's all right. But there are other words that if you misplace the stress syllable or if you say it differently, will change. For example, vó, vô. One is the grandmother and the other is the grandfather. Para. Para means stop. Para, or sometimes, usually we say pra, means for or to. Sabia and sábia. Sabia is like I knew. Sábia is a wise person. I and é. I means and, é means is. This I think is one of the most important. And one that a friend of mine used to make fun of is that we have some booths around town that sell coconut water, and coconut doesn't have an accent, but poop does. So if you say coco, you're meaning coconut. If you say coco, it's poop. So it's important to keep an eye on those things. Sabia que ia falar de cocô. So that's it for today. Avoid these common mistakes and it will make your life much easier to learn, and schedule your private lessons so you can practice them and avoid these mistakes with a lot more confidence. Thank you so much e até a próxima. Tchau!